Hello, welcome, and thank you for joining Eastern Florida State College and our commemoration of Constitution Day 2020. It was 233 years ago today that the Constitution was signed, and we're here today to celebrate that incredible, monumental event. My name is Christopher Muro, and I've had the privilege of being an assistant political science professor on the Melbourne campus for the past 16 years, and it's my honor to be your host today. 233 years ago, making the Constitution of the United States the oldest and longest surviving constitution in the world. But this was not the first document or the first charter that governed our nation. In 1781, after securing our independence from Great Britain, the states adopted the Articles of Confederation. But by 1786, a majority of the states recognized it was inadequate. And in 1787, 12 of the 13 states, Rhode Island did not participate, sent 55 delegates to Philadelphia with the charge to amend the Articles of Confederation. The delegates went well beyond that mandate. They destroyed and supplanted the Articles of Confederation with the United States Constitution. Those 55 delegates arrived in Philadelphia in May of 1787. They were locked inside Independence Hall until September of that year, sworn to secrecy, with no air conditioning, no toothpaste, and no pizza delivery. How did they survive? Well, not only did they survive, but they thrived in creating this incredible document, the Constitution, that has become a beacon of hope and a roadmap to freedom for countries all across the world. Those 55 delegates, by the time September had rolled around in that year, only 42 were left. And on September 17th, 39 of the 42 delegates signed the Constitution, with names that are giants of that day and even giants today, like Benjamin Franklin of Pennsylvania, Roger Sherman of Connecticut, and of course the convention president, the Virginian George Washington. Who were the three that didn't sign, you ask? Excellent question. George Mason and Edmund Randolph of Virginia, and Eldridge Gerry of Massachusetts, of the gerrymandering fame. Those three delegates refused to sign largely because the document did not contain a Bill of Rights. Nothing can really portray the magnitude, the solemnity, and the importance of that day, September 17th, 1787, like the incredible depiction of American artist Howard Chandler Christie in his very famous work on the signing of our Constitution. 233 years ago today. Its durability and longevity only serves to augment its genius. Through civil war, terrorism, social unrest, pandemics, hyper-partisanship, and polarization, one thing has stood firm through all of those challenges: the United States Constitution. Recent polling, 68% of the American people hold the Constitution in high esteem, and a majority of the American people believe the document was divinely inspired. What does the Constitution do? What does the Constitution say that makes it so important and relevant even 233 years later? Those are fantastic questions, but we're not going to answer them right now. We will momentarily. Before we do, though, we would love to hear from Eastern Florida State College Concert Choir, under the direction of Professor of Music, the inestimable Dr. Robert Lamb, pre-recorded from last year's Constitution Day celebration, the national anthem, and an inspiring patriotic medley. Dr. Lamb, Concert Choir, please take it away.
Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light, what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched
thank you, Dr. Robert Lamb and the Eastern Florida State College Concert Choir, for that inspiring patriotic music performance. Thank you so much. Now, let's get back to those important questions. What does the Constitution do? What does it say that makes it so relevant and so important even today, 233 years later? Well, it establishes three branches of government: the legislative, the executive, and the judicial branch. It delegates and divides powers to each one of those branches, creating what's called the separation of powers. And it provides for us an intricate system of checks and balances to make sure that none of those branches overstep the authority that they have been granted. It creates a central government that has a strong national and international identity while preserving the self-independence and creativity that comes with self-governance in the states. That is what we call federalism. Surely the most important component, though, of the Constitution is Article 5, which outlines the mechanisms for providing updates and amendments. The founders wisely recognized that having a mechanism for change within the document would prohibit the Constitution, which is the law of the land, from being immutable. It would then be able to serve the needs of the people, not for years, not for decades, but for generations and generations to come. In fact, most people, when they hear the word the Constitution, they in fact think of the amendments, and more particularly, the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments of the Constitution that were added altogether in one fell swoop on December 15th, 1791. Most people are unaware that James Madison, author of the Bill of Rights, submitted 19 amendments to the Congress, of which 17 were approved by the House, but only 12 of those were approved by the Senate, and only 10 were ratified by the states. So Article 5 allows for change, it allows for update, it allows for modernization. It is what has allowed the Constitution to survive and endure through centuries. And the process in Article 5 is extremely difficult. It is the most difficult Constitution to amend in the world today. It requires 2/3 vote of the United States Congress, and then it requires 3/4, that is 75% of the states, to agree to adopt the proposed amendment. Again, one of the most difficult procedures in our system of government. The Bill of Rights, those first 10 amendments that were ratified by the states and added to the Constitution in 1791. Most people, when they think of the Constitution, again, they think of the Bill of Rights. And how important are these rights today? Well, the First Amendment, let's just take a look at the First Amendment. The First Amendment, it talks about freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of religion, the right to assemble. And it starts with those immortal words, Congress shall make no law. Sometimes I wish they had stopped at that, but they kept going. And they talked about Congress not being able to abridge the freedoms of religion, the freedom of speech, the freedom of the press, the right to assemble peacefully, and the right to petition the government for change. The Second Amendment talks about the right of self-defense, the right to keep and bear arms, to protect one's life and one's liberty and one's property. The Fourth Amendment prohibits the government from unlawful and unreasonable searches and seizures, whether of its paperwork in our homes or information that's on our smartphone. The Fifth and Sixth Amendments to the Constitution provide us with important legal protections like the due process of law, the prohibition against self-incrimination, the prohibition against being tried twice for the same crime, and the right to hire an attorney for one's defense. The Eighth Amendment prohibits cruel and unusual punishments that can be imposed for punishment for crimes. One thing that has been lost is that if we take a close look at the Bill of Rights, what we will notice is that every provision in the Bill of Rights restricts and restrains and limits the power that government has over its citizens. And that is the principle that undergirds the American experiment. How do we foster and promote freedom? We do it by restraining government and its power and empowering the individual. And that is an important point I think we need to keep moving forward into the 21st century, is to rediscover that very important principle. The 10th Amendment, can't leave that one out. It talks about the relationship of power between the national government and the state governments, which is that ever so important relationship that we call federalism. Now, the Constitution in 233 years has been amended a total of 27 times. So again, the process is laborious and difficult, but it's that way on purpose, to make sure that there's a broad consensus among the states and the people to change our Constitution. But there have been some important amendments and additions. For example, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, the so-called Civil War Amendments, abolish slavery, make sure that the newly emancipated are given due process of law, and the 15th Amendment, giving the right to vote to African American males. The 19th Amendment, we are celebrating the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment, which is also known commonly as women's suffrage, which prevents the government from abridging the right to vote based upon sex. The 22nd Amendment limits president's term to 2 terms. This was something that all presidents had followed, following the precedent of George Washington, but was officially added to our Constitution as the 22nd Amendment. The 24th Amendment prohibits the poll tax, and importantly, the 26th Amendment reduces the voting age to 18. So there have been many important updates, modifications, and changes that have made the Constitution modernized and updated to meet the needs of the current population. And again, that is the genius that has allowed for the Constitution to endure for these generations. The Constitution is an incredible document. Once again, a roadmap to freedom for nations all over the world. There's so much to it. I've been studying the Constitution for 26 years, and I can tell you that I'm just getting started. Every time I pick it up to read it, there's something new to be discovered. There's something new to learn. And I hope that you, in joining us today for our celebration of Constitution Day 2020, that you'll continue to live the virtues of the Constitution, and that you'll continue to pursue information and knowledge about this very important document. Thank you for joining us today for our celebration.